lawyer, but you know what? Some of you are too. You're posers. You're acting like somebody you're not. You remember that movie Hook? It's just so good. And it's Peter Panning. This like he used to be Peter Pan, but he's grown up to this uptight lawyer, Peter Panning. Remember the little boy grabs him by the face and he says, "There you are, Peter." See that scene? And heaven has been looking at some of you and saying, "Who are you?" Right? Like we had this God-given wiring harness. Try this experiment with me. Reach out your right foot. Now reach up your right hand. Go clockwise with your foot first. Right? Guys, that would be to the right. Right? Now with your hand, draw a 6. Did your foot like crazy? I've lost that guy for the rest of the evening. He's just going to be doing that. But we have this God-given wiring harness, and all of heaven, it works, right? So we have this God-given wiring harness, but we're not living into it, some of us. And you know why we're not living into it? Some of us are afraid. And Jesus kept telling his disciples, God throughout the Old Testament kept telling his friends the same thing. He said these words, "Be not afraid." Remember in Jeremiah, God says, "Jeremiah, you're the guy." And he said, "I can't be the guy." And he said, "Be not afraid." And to Joshua, he said, "You're taking over for Moses." And he said, "I can't do that." And he said, "Be not afraid." And to Abram, in Genesis, after a big fight, he said, "I'm your shield and your great reward. Be not afraid." You guys getting the memo? And a bunch of disciples rowing a boat, and he says, "It is I. Be not afraid." You guys get it? If we stop being afraid, then we'll be different, because everybody wants to make a difference in the world, but few people want to live differently than the world. And so we have to do that. I'll tell you one of the things I do every single Thursday, I quit something. Isn't that great? Thursday, you can quit cussing if you want, or don't, whatever. Like, pick something every Thursday and say, it's out. Pick good stuff. I was on the board of this awesome nonprofit. They're changing the world. And I called them up and I said, "I'm out." And they said, "Why?" I said, "It's Thursday. I quit stuff." Isn't that great? You guys, I came to my office. My secretary had written a letter to me. She put it on the wall. It said, "Dear Bob, I quit." It's dated Thursday. So I went in. I said, "Deborah, is everything okay? Have I offended you?" She says, "No." And I said, "Well, do you like your job? Is there she says, "No, I love my job." I said, "Well, then great. I just don't accept it." So you guys quit stuff. Ladies, if you're married, you got to hang in there. But if you're just dating the guy, on Thursday, break up with him when he says "Why?" It's Thursday. I quit you. I'm out. Oh my gosh. One of the things that I'm tempted to do, though, we have this parade. We have this parade on my block, and our block's only 8 houses long. And the parade only has one rule. Get this rule. Everybody has to be in it and no one can watch. Isn't that great? So I blow up all these helium balloons, thousands of them, and hundreds of people show up for this. And the thing I'm afraid of is that the balloon's gonna pop. You know when you're blowing them up and you're going big and it pops? So I'm tempted to do this and call it good, right? Because it's a balloon, right? And it's a job you've got, or it's a career, or it's a relationship, but it isn't you. It's just this it's a balloon, but it's not your faith. It's not who God's making you to be. And all of heaven is saying, be not afraid, just be you. And some of us are called to all kinds of different things. God loves justice. He's nuts about kids. He hates lawyers, but he's nuts about justice and kids. So I just went to Uganda. And if you guys have followed what happened in that country, there's been this 25-year civil war. And the average age of the country, get this, is 15 years old. It's a nation of children. And so I went over there and I started going into jails and finding these kids. If I don't want like your brother to hang out with my daughter, I accuse him of defilement. And that day he goes to prison. And 5 years later, he's still in that prison. He's never stepped foot in a court. And I said, this is crazy. Like, why don't we try the cases? So I did the next thing. So I bought the entire Ugandan law library, both books. And I just started briefing cases like I was invited. I wasn't invited. I'm not even on the bar. Like, but you're invited. Here, I'm doing this Jedi thing. You're invited to be who you are. And heaven's doing that. They're flapping their wings and saying, like what he said. Like, be you. So we went into these jails. Do you have a picture of a Ugandan jail? Like, we found these little boys in this jail, and they'd been there for years. And so we tried the cases. We tried the first 100 cases, and we dropped off 98 kids with all the charges resolved. That's evidence of Jesus in the book of Acts, and I love that it's called the book of Acts, not a book of opinions. It's like the book of Acts, it says, Theophilus, lover of God, look for many convincing proofs that Jesus is alive. Now, that's a convincing proof. And the people that are trafficking kids, there's no law up until a few years ago making it illegal to traffic people. Uganda, a source country for so much of our human trafficking. And so the law gets passed, but nobody, you know who's trafficking the kids? The witch doctors. And this witch doctor named Kabi abducts a little boy, and we'll just say his name is Charlie. And Kabi is the biggest, baddest witch doctor in the north. And he abducts this little boy, and child sacrifice is something that's big in Uganda, and there's always a victim, but they're always dead. They believe that the head or the blood or the private parts of a little kid have these magical powers. It's creepy, but there's 33 million people that believe that stuff. And so nobody's ever tried a case against a witch doctor because they're afraid they're like, make a doll and put pins on him. Maria thinks there's a doll that looks like me and they're putting pins in. I think they're just rolling him in sugar cookies. Like, so, you guys are killing me. So Charlie is walking home. Charlie's walking home on the border of Congo, and Kabi abducts him. And Kabi takes him into the bush and takes these private parts off and leaves him for dead. But Charlie didn't die. And so for the first time, we've got a victim, we've got a bad guy, and we found a judge. And we brought this kid. Let me introduce, this is Kabi. This is the witch doctor in Uganda. I texted a friend, Dawn, from the trial, and I said, I'm looking into the face of pure evil. And we tried the case, and it's a capital crime. It's a death penalty case. Kabi gets convicted. But what happens to the little kid? Like, God always uses these little four-footers. Let me introduce you to Charlie. That's Charlie. And I don't know what it's going to be like, folks, when we get to heaven, but don't you hope Jesus just touches you on the nose and just says, you rascal. Like, you are who I made you to be. It's about time. And so Charlie changes the world in Uganda, and nobody's scared of these witch doctors as much anymore because 33 million people, it hits all the papers that a witch doctor goes to jail to die. But what happens to Charlie? Like, he's this kid, he's all torn up, and then Jesus shows up again. There's a doctor, and he's trying to learn how to fly a seaplane. And do you know what a beaver seaplane is? They'd make them out of beef jerky if they could. They're like all guy. They like take off and land on like 6 days, 7 nights, like Harrison Ford. Well, he's trying to learn how to fly a beaver. They're so old and dangerous. I have one. They're built in the 40s. They're rickety. So there's this guy trying to learn how to fly this plane. He's a doctor, and the person teaching him talks about what happened to Charlie. He lands the plane, and he calls me at home and says, I heard what happened to this little boy, and I can fix him. And I said, buddy, you didn't hear what got cut off because you can't fix that. And he said, I'm the chief of surgery at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I can fix him. And I said, what? So I go up to LA, and he gets out a piece of paper and he starts drawing like we're gonna take some legs, some arm. I've got the piece of paper. If TSA finds it, I'm going to jail. So I said, how much would that cost? He said, it'd be staggering, but I'll do it for nothing. Evidence of Jesus? You bet it is. So 180 days ago, Cedars-Sinai writes a check for $50,000. And I go over to Uganda and get the 4-footer. And so we get on a plane. He's never even seen a plane before. And we land in London, right? And he asked me, like, could we just walk the rest of the way? I'm like, oh, buddy, sorry. Like, I got to digress for a second. Do you play pranks on friends? Like, I totally do, and I'm awesome at it. There's this guy, Doug. He's a total soft target. He made the mistake of telling me where he was spending his 15-year wedding anniversary. He got this penthouse suite, and the elevator opens up into the room. Get it? Like, that cool? Well, I took Sweet Maria, and we checked in as them. So, we got up there, and I called room service, and I had sent them lobster and creme brulee, and there's like some dessert was on fire, so I ordered 2. Then we danced, and then we tidied up and we split. And the whole idea is he went there, had this awesome time, and when he checked out, he got a $400 bill, and he's like, Bob, right? Now, he's been trying to get me back now for years, but he can't because I'm a lawyer. So I get this call from this guy with this really convincing Ugandan accent. And he talks about schools and jails and all this stuff that we're doing, all the stuff Doug knew. And he said, this is Ambassador Kamununweri. I'm the ambassador from Uganda, and I would like to know if you'll be counsel for the Republic of Uganda. I covered the phone and said, Maria, it's Doug. He says he's the ambassador.